I want to talk today about how to instantly, automatically, permanently, and easily eliminate conflict. Does that sound like an impossibility to you? Well, let me begin with a story, and then we're going to look at a story from the Bible that illustrates this idea. In the 1940s, representatives from the National Restaurant Association asked William Foote White, a professor of the University of Chicago, to help with a growing problem. As World War II came to an end, the United States was in a period of incredible growth and prosperity. Along with this flourishing economy, Americans began eating out in unprecedented numbers. Unfortunately, the restaurant industry wasn't ready for the surge of customers. Along with the return of the soldiers came an awkward change in the restaurant pecking order. GIs returned from battle to take over the high-paying jobs of cook, one that, along with Rosie the Riveter, women had occupied for the first time during the labor-starved war years. Many of these displaced cooks who had been forced to step down to the job of waitress were upset with the new circumstances. So, crowded conditions. We have these ladies who have been demoted because of the men coming back from the war. So, when they shouted their orders, they were not always polite. They gnarled. The gnarled veterans weren't always pleased to be taking orders from these women. Given the increased workload and the growing social tension, loud arguments often broke out at the kitchen counter. The results were predictable. Not only did the commotion annoy the patrons, but the power struggles often resulted in late or incorrect orders, sometimes out of confusion, but oftentimes out of revenge. By the time Dr. White entered the scene, both customers and employees were stomping out of restaurants in increasing number. And let me just stop the story there and ask you, if you were in charge, if you were asked to solve this national problem, how would you go about solving this conflict? Is there a way? Could there possibly be a way to instantly, automatically, permanently, and rather easily fix this problem? Do you think that would actually be a possibility? Well, let's keep reading here. Dr. White started his work by observing. It's a good place to start. Started his work by observing a sample of restaurants, doing his best to identify the behaviors behind the growing conflict. He noted that the waitresses would rush to the counter, shout an order, and then rush back to her customers. If the order was not ready when she returned, she would urge the cook to hurry, shouting expressions of encouragement such as, "Hey, hairball, where's the breaded veal? You got a broken arm back there or what?" The cooks, how do you think the cooks responded? I've said to you before, you speak to me in a snitty tone, you're likely to get a snitty tone in response, and that's what we see here. The cooks usually responded in kind. Later, when the waitresses received an incorrect order, the two would exchange still more unflattering remarks. After being yelled at a couple of times, the cooks often took revenge by slowing down. Dr. White even observed cooks turning their backs on the servers and intentionally ignoring them until they left, sometimes leaving in tears. And I ask you again, how would you solve this problem? While many consultants might have been tempted to alter this unhealthy social climate by teaching interpersonal skills, that's what we tempted to do, right? Let's just teach you some interpersonal skills. Maybe we'll do some counseling, conducting team building exercises, or changing the pay system. White took a different approach. In his view, the best way to solve the problem was to change the way employees communicated. And now for White's stroke of genius. Dr. White recommended that the restaurant use a 50-cent metal spindle. I put a picture up here, maybe an advanced version of that spindle. You've probably seen them in restaurants. He asked servers to skew a detailed written order on the spindle. Cooks were then to pull the orders off and fill them in whatever sequence seemed most efficient to them, generally speaking, following a first in, first out policy. But because might have a big order here and a small order here, the cook had the discretion to rearrange the order just a bit. White's recommendation was tried at a pilot restaurant the next day. Training consists, how long do you think the training would take in this case? Training consists of a 10-minute instruction session that was given to both cooks and servers. Managers reported immediate decrease in conflict and customer complaints. Both cooks and servers preferred the new structure, and both groups reported that they were being treated better. The National Restaurant Association distributed information about the new system to its membership. White's spindle, which quickly transformed into the now familiar order wheel, did not directly affect behavior. White chose not to confront norms, history, or habit. Instead, he simply eliminated the need for verbal communication and all its attendant problems. He did so immediately, and the improvement lasted forever, not by changing people, but by changing things. And so we see an example of how to instantly, automatically, permanently, and easily eliminate conflict. And we want to see an example now from Scripture. So as we look at this passage, we want to ask the question. You always want to give people something to look for before you read Scripture. And this week we want to ask the question, what can we learn about eliminating conflict from this passage? One thing I want to remind you, I haven't reminded you maybe in a few weeks, and I want to remind you often, the introduction, remember how this goes, the introduction should answer the question, why should I listen to you today? And today you want to give people, this week you want to give people the promise, the introduction by promise, the promise that if you will listen to me today, you can learn how to instantly, automatically, permanently, and easily eliminate some, not all, but some conflict. So let's look at our passage. Now, Lot, Abraham's nephew, who was moving about with Abraham, Abram called here, but I'm going to call him Abraham, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. And quarreling, we looked last week about the sin of quarreling. Quarreling arose between Abraham, I'm going to call them Abram's herders, and Lot's. The Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land at the time. So Abraham said to Lot, let's not have any more quarreling between you and me, or between your herders and mine, for we are close relatives. Anything look wrong to you about that? Let's try really hard to get along with each other. Is that what he said? It's actually not what he said. He didn't say, let's try really hard not to quarrel and instead be nice to each other. What he says was, is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. Lot looked around and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan toward Zoar was watered like the garden of the Lord, certainly a reference to the Garden of Eden, like the land of Egypt. So it's this area here above the Dead Sea. Got a picture of it. A picture always helps us to visualize what's being talked about there. This was before the Lord destroyed both Sodom and Gomorrah, somewhere in that area. We're not really sure. Some people think it's actually in the what is now below the Dead Sea. Anyway, so Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. The two men parted company. How did they eliminate conflict? Well, they parted company. So, four observations. The first one is this: sometimes physical changes can eliminate conflict. Sometimes physical changes can have an effect on relationships. We see in this case, let's part company. And when they parted company, when they created a little separation, they were able to get along. I think I told you the story that last week of my boys not getting along so well. And when we got I stick them in the back seat of the car and put this kid on this side and this kid on this side, and I put a line down the middle, and they'd punch one another and so on. Then I put two lines, and I got a neutral zone, and that didn't work. Later on, we got a van, and eventually put one kid in the back of the van and one kid in the front of the van and me in the middle seat of the van, and put my wife driving. And now I'm in between my two boys, and it instantly and permanently eliminated conflict. Sometimes physical realities can affect relational realities. I nearly always talk about my teaching with my wife before I talk to my church about it, and ask her, do you ever eliminate conflict in your classroom this way? And she's, I can't, what did she say exactly? Nearly every day, certainly every week. I'll have two knuckleheads that can't get along with each other, and I'll say, you knucklehead get in this corner, and you knucklehead get in that corner, and voila, problem solved. Of course, sometimes there's another knucklehead, and we got to put them in this corner, another knucklehead, and sometimes we run out of corners. But the point is, sometimes physical reality can change the relational dynamic. I've heard stories of couples who would retire and they got along well their whole life, but now they're just under each other's foot all day long. And in this case, what they need is not counseling. They need for him to take up golf. They need for her to get a card playing group of lady friends that she goes out. And if they could just spend some time apart, they get along with each other as long as they're not just there all day, every day. And sometimes physical changes can affect relational realities. Now, this is not only true in eliminating conflict, it is also true in enhancing relationships. Sometimes changing the physical dynamic can not only eliminate conflict, it can actually make the relationship better. In his book, Influencer, these 5 authors talk about Mimi Silbert, who serves as the president and chairman of the board and CEO of Delancey Street Foundation, which Carl Menninger called the best and most successful rehabilitation program I have studied in the world. Delancey Street serves ex-felons, prostitutes, substance abusers, and others who have hit bottom. And how does she do it? How does Mimi Silbert get these ex-felons to get along? Sometimes she's got an arrangement, as I understand it, with the prison system, where somebody has a low sentence, that the judge will give them the opportunity to go to Mimi Silbert's facility instead of jail, or maybe they can get the last few years instead of spending the last few years of their term. Instead of spending that in jail, they can go to Mimi Silbert's facility. And she gets these ex-drug dealers, ex-felons, ex-murderers, ex-prostitutes, all in the same room, and how does she teach them to get along? The first thing Silbert does is to stack previously mortal enemies, practically, I want to say, on top of each other. She takes 3 guys, one new resident who's a card-carrying member of the Mexican mafia, another who 6 months earlier was a Crip, and another who just a year ago was a leader in the Aryan Brotherhood, and she makes them all roommates. In this case, she forces them together. In the earlier story, the story in the Bible, we saw how separation could produce conflict. Here we see the example where getting people in the same room can actually enhance relationships. 9 such diverse folks will share a dorm. Someone from another background will be a crew boss. Perhaps a member of yet another race will be the minion leader. It's like international spaghetti, with every possible politically incorrect grouping tossed into the mix. And then they're asked to help and confront each other in healthy ways. This book also tells a story about how there's been a relationship in recent years between the sale of the dinner table and family conflict, family dysfunction. As the number of family dinner tables has gone down, and by the way, the number of microwave ovens has gone up, the number of conflicts in families have gone down. The amount of dysfunction in families has gone up as well. Well, what's the correlation here? Well, the correlation is the family who sits down and has dinner together. It used to be so much trouble to fix dinner that we would do it all at once and everybody would eat at the same time around the dinner table. Well, now with the advent of the microwave, we can just pop something in the microwave and go to my bedroom and read or watch TV or play a game or whatever. When the family had to get together, it enhanced relationships. I read this article about how a porch swing saved a marriage. Speaking of furniture, Ricardo N. reports that a porch swing helped save his marriage. You wouldn't think that'd be possible, would you? He and his wife, Helen, went through a trouble time after they aligned their jobs. They now had time to spend together, but had fallen into the habit of winding down after work, plopping in front of a TV, he in the den, she in the family room, and then settling into a solitary activity of some sort. They just weren't used to spending time together. Enter the porch swing. Ricardo and Helen committed to sit for 15 minutes. Example of what I like to say, set a low bar and go for ruthless consistency. 15 minutes, a low bar, and just talk about their day and any concerns that they wanted to air. To signal their commitment, they bought the porch swing and designated it as the location for their nightly parlays. The swing served as a cue that reminded them of their agreement, and it also offered an attractive and comfortable place that made talking less stressful. Finally, it had an unanticipated positive effect. Somehow sitting side by side in the confined space created a warmth that soothed their emotions and made the understanding come easier. Less physical distance, in this case, led to less emotional distance. But my point is that the physical surroundings can either eliminate conflict or they could enhance relationships. Third observation, sometimes physical changes can improve all kinds of things, not just eliminate conflict and not just enhance relationships, but help with all kinds of things. Now, let me give you a misquote of 1 Corinthians 10:13 to show you what I mean. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. Remember, this is a misquote. You find where try to figure out where I've misquoted this. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he'll also give you lots of willpower so that you can endure it. Can you work out where I misquoted that verse? Well, it's that part right there where it says, give you lots of willpower. What it actually says is, that God will provide a way out, that He will change the physical circumstances. He will give you an opportunity. It's why I like to say I like to follow what I used to call the Andy Stanley rule. Come to find out, Andy Stanley got it from Billy Graham. And that is, I don't go to lunch with a woman. I don't counsel a woman alone. I don't talk to a woman about anything personal. And you do that, and you're just not tempted to have an affair. And if you change the physical environment, it can help with all kinds of things. It is a constant battle. It has been a constant battle for 10 years for me to try to lose. I did lose 50 or so pounds 10 years or so ago, but to keep that off, I'm at about 40 of it off right now. But I tell you, it's a constant battle. But one of the things I've learned is that if I can adjust my physical surrounding, meaning if there's not ice cream in the freezer, I'm not tempted to eat ice cream. And really, I only have to maintain self-control, or my wife and I only have to maintain self-control once a week if we don't go out to eat, and if we shop once a week at the grocery store. That is, if I can maintain self-control when I'm at that grocery store and just shop the perimeter of the grocery store, as they like to say, the healthy parts of the grocery store. If I can keep the ice cream out of the basket, then I'll keep it out of my stomach. And if I can change the physical environment, it changes all kinds of things. Last observation, sometimes a change of structure is not enough. It's classic verse, Ezekiel 36:26 says, I will give you a new heart. What you need is not just separation. What you need is not just a change in physical environment. What you need ultimately is a new heart, a change of heart. I will give you a new heart. I will put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And the daily prayer of every disciple is this: create in me, Lord, daily create in me a pure heart and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Well, how does God do this? Well, I got this list of 21 laws. I got a new book just released on that recently. And the idea is that God gives us a new heart. He transforms us by the renewing of our mind. He transforms us in community. He transforms us with the power of the Holy Spirit. He transforms us through the power of our faith. He transforms us through worship. He transforms us through the power of train yourself to be godly. And in all these ways, God is creating in us a new heart and making us the kind of people who deeply love one another. And may God richly bless you as you teach your people this week to instantly, automatically, permanently, and in some cases, somewhat easily rid yourselves of conflict.